and welcome to the Document D video. So I just found out, after watching the Document C video thoroughly, you can't actually see my mouse. You can see when I highlight things, but you can't see my mouse like when I was pointing out the dates for Document C on the Korean map. I was trying to mouse over those dates, hoping and thinking you could see them. You can't. If you are struggling to find them, please let me know in the comments on Google Classroom, and I will do what I can to help you out. On the other hand, you could just read the map carefully. So let's talk about this. There are two different circles that I want to talk about. There's the large circle, the dotted line circle, which is, according to the key down here, the range of the Soviet missiles that are located on Cuba. What's important about the range are all these massive population centers that are within range. You've got Mexico City, Houston, Dallas, New Orleans, Atlanta, Miami, New York, and Washington, D.C. And to a lesser extent, you also even have Caracas down here in Venezuela. That is a lot of people that would have been threatened by these communist missiles. That adds to the sense of fear in the 60s. It's really important to understand the devastation and fear that was sort of a major feature of these weeks. The smaller circle, the dark gray circle, is the U.S. quarantine line, which we established a quarantine as opposed to a blockade, even though it was a blockade, because a blockade is an act of war. It can be interpreted that way, which would have given the Soviet Union cause to actually launch the missiles. So we made the decision to call it a quarantine, because a quarantine can be interpreted differently. And we didn't want to give the Soviet Union any sort of extra reason to launch these missiles. Whether or not that was the right choice, I don't know. So the U.S. quarantine line is set up there. You have most of our Navy and all of these fun things. And then you have the location of the actual missiles shown on there. Now, let's look at the timeline, which I can't highlight because you can't see my mouse, but whatever. It starts in January of 1959, where Cuba itself becomes communist. Fidel Castro takes over, and this is the only communist country on this side of the planet. It's within spitting distance of the United States, and this right here is exactly what we were worried about. We were worried about a communist power being near us and using its just geography to position Soviet weapons close to our borders, which is exactly what happened. In April of 1961, we made a mistake. We gave the pass to a bunch of Cuban revolutionaries to try to go invade Cuba. We tried to go invade Cuba, really, is what it comes down to. We failed. We were hoping for a populist uprising in 1961. It didn't work, and it was a huge embarrassment for the United States. In May of 1962, the Soviet Union began to secretly ship troops and missiles to communist Cuba, which once again is exactly what we were worried about. We did not discover that it was happening until October 15th, 1962, when we took pictures that we weren't supposed to be taking of Cuba. On October 23rd is when we put the quarantine in place. October 24th, we stopped several Soviet transports. October 25, the missiles become operational, which means now they can launch them. And then October 28th, we reach a deal. Today is October 29th. Yesterday was the anniversary of this. Fun fact. On October 28th, we reach a deal. They begin to remove the missiles, but it's not until April of 1963, so April of the following year, that we begin to remove our missiles from Turkey, which was some of this backdoor deals that we made. But we had to wait almost a year in order to save face and make us not look weak. Politics. It is what it is. So, again, as with all of these documents, you need to be asking yourself, what was containment? And then, was it the correct policy at the time? Did containment work here? Did containment work here? Did it stop the spread of communism? Did it stop the spread of communist power? Consider that as you are answering the questions here. Make sure, even though I didn't mention it when we were covering the Korean document, did containment work here? Did containment not work here? This one's a little bit different because we didn't win the Korean War, but did we lose the Korean War? With document B, did keeping communism from spreading, work here? You're gonna want to ask yourself for each one of these, and that'll help set up what your body paragraphs are going to look like in your actual paper. As always, if you have any questions, please post them in the comments on Google Classroom.